Hey Pam, is that you who called in?
Yes. Can you hear
All
me?
right, yes, we sure can. I'm gonna leave you unmuted so in case you want to interject, okay?
Yeah, that's fine. I can mute my phone.
All right, that sounds good. Thank you.
Okay.
Hey Willow.
Hey, thanks.
Welcome. Do you want to check your video?
No, I think it works. I'm on my phone.
All right, that sounds good. That's
Th-
fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, bye. Hey Laura Lee.
Yes, ma'am.
All good today?
Just sore throat. Otherwise good.
Yeah. All right then. Well, you keep that stuff to yourself.
I'm trying.
All right. Thank you.
Yep.
Good evening, Dan.
Hey Debbie,
How are you today?
good. How are you?
Just wonderful.
Good to hear.
We'll get started in a few minutes.
Is it in? Or is it bigger than that?
Hey, Mr. Tom.
No, this is Jerry. My internet's down, so I'm having to do my, go on my phone.
Oh, okay. Mr. James?
That's me.
Yep. Are you the 910290?
Yes, ma'am, that's me.
All right. That's awesome. Thank you. We're going to leave you unmuted, or you can mute yourself and unmute, okay?
Okay, you can just mute me. That'll be all right.
All right. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
And then Mr. Thomas Smith, you
I'm
there?
here. I am here.
That is awesome. We see you and we hear you.
Very good.
All right. Thank you. Okay, we have 6 out of the 11 right now.
Wonder what happened.
Internet went out.
No.
So it looks like we're still waiting on our chair.
Fred just sent me a text message, said he'll be on in a minute.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Hey,
Hey, Dr. Scharf,
can you guys hear me okay?
we sure can. Do you want us to
Okay.
check your video?
Sure. See it? Okay,
Yeah, we sure do. Thank you.
cool.
Yeah, there's 7 here right now.
Okay.
So Paula, was that how many are we expecting tonight?
Laura, we have 4 more that I have down as possibly planning to join us tonight. Now, one, Samuel Boyce did mention he might be late because I think he had a class or something corresponding with the time period. And I know Truby Proctor was potentially having to call in because he had a change to his schedule. But we still have Tim Wilson and Michael Yates as well. So we do have a few folks that are supposed to be here from what I was told.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. So Fred, it's up to you whether you'd like us to go ahead and get started or if you'd like to give him a few more minutes.
I think we could just, it's 6:03. I think we could wait maybe till 6:05 and then I thought it would be good. And we can just do some introductions of the new members because we do have some folks that have recently joined. And so maybe we can, at 6:05 we can do that and then we could vote on the agenda and the minutes and then get started.
Okay,
So
sounds
yeah,
good.
we'll wait like 2 minutes. Nikolai doing okay?
Yep, he's doing well. He's
Good.
actually
Well,
cooking dinner right now.
Make sure to tell him I said hello.
Absolutely. He was just bragging about some code he wrote.
Oh
Which
yeah,
It's not that I'm the wrong person to brag to about that.
I know. I definitely, miss talking to him and hearing about those kinds of things.
Yeah. Well, feel free to call him up anytime. He talks about it a lot.
Yeah. I wish I had his coding skills.
Yeah, me too.
I do not have those.
I'm always impressed.
Laura, do you know how many new members that we have? I know Ken is new. He's not, I mean, he's new now. He's been on this committee in the past years ago, and he's been on other committees. But besides Ken, who else is new?
So let's see. There are 3 new members. There's Truby Proctor, Ken Siegler, and then Michael Yates.
Okay.
And then we did have people who've been reappointed, and that's Pam, Tom Smith, and Tim Wilson. We're all reappointed.
Fred, this will be my 15th birthday of sitting on these committees.
Thank you for sticking with it.
I know. I think I've been a member of this one almost since I've been here, almost 20 years, I think, since I've been at UNCW. When I joined it, it was back when we had Chris might remember Dick Stone and Joe Clem were 2 retired guys from NOAA, and they were other scientists that were on this committee, and then myself. And so, yeah, I've been on it a long time. Okay, just looking at our attendees. Okay, so it's 6:06. So I think we can call the meeting to order. I see Michael is on and Ken is here. And so just as a quick introduction, I'm Fred Scharf. I'm a professor of fisheries science at UNCW, and as I just said, I've served on this Southern Regional AC for almost 20 years, and have been serving as the chair or co-chair for probably the last 5 or 6. And because it's a virtual meeting, we won't do introductions for everyone. We'll do that when we get together in person. For those of you that are new, the idea is that we'll do every other meeting in person. So having a quarterly meeting every few months each season. So our next meeting in April, I think that one would be scheduled to be in person, and then we can do full introductions where everybody can just spend a minute or so introducing themselves so everybody gets reacquainted. But for today's meeting, before we approve the agenda and the minutes, I'll ask the new members to just quickly introduce themselves. So I'll just start with Ken.
Okay, it's Ken Siegler. I'm Onslow County. I've commercial fished here in Onslow County for well over 40 years now. I've got pretty much extensive research that I've done through grant programs and whatnot on some species, stone crabs being one, which they're doing very well now.
That's good. Well, I appreciate it, Ken. We appreciate you joining back up with us. And I remember doing a little stone crab stuff way back in the day. So it'll be good to reconnect with you.
They were at a pretty low point. They were getting pretty rugged. And,
yeah.
Now there's poundage is really starting to leap up on them, and they're moving up into the northern areas and repopulating there. So that little spawning season in the middle of the summer has helped, have worked out real well.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Ken, for joining us again. Michael Yates, are you able to just quickly introduce yourself to the group?
Yeah. Hey, hi to everybody. Like you said, I'm Michael Yates. I am actually a fisheries and wildlife science student. I'll be wrapping up my BS this year. Before that, I was in the Marine Corps, retired in 2015. Then I went to school and got an aquaculture degree. So I've got a little home aquaculture business that I'm actually going to be expanding into doing some conservation aquaculture. And then on top of that, I also work for the water department as a control center operator. So this is sort of my first thing in the in the fisheries field, and so I'm hoping to learn a lot.
Super. Thanks a lot, Michael. It's nice to meet you, and I think you'll like being part of this advisory committee. It's a good group of folks and diverse backgrounds, so lots of good people to meet. So we'll look forward to meeting you in person in April. And Laura, did you say what was it, Truby or Trudy, with a D or a B? Was our other new member?
It's Truby with a B.
Okay. And is she here or not here tonight?
I
don't
am not
see
sure.
her.
I think Paula said she was going to be joining maybe a little bit later.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So if we see her join a little bit later, we can have her introduce herself. So this is the January 2023 meeting of the Southern Regional Advisory Committee. Tonight's meeting is going to be mostly informational. We're going to receive some orientation from Laura, a short discussion of stock assessment. I'm assuming that's going to be Laura Lee. And then Laura's going to give us a commission update and an FMP supplement update for Strike Mullet from Dan Zapp and Jeff Dobbs. But we don't have anything tonight that we would vote to make any recommendations tonight. So we do have to vote on approval of the agenda, which I just sort of went over broadly there. So can someone make a motion to approve the agenda?
Yeah, this is Jason Fowler. I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Ken Ziegler, I'll second.
Okay.
If you want me to, I can call out the names of those here, if you like, for the A's and A's.
I think what we can do, like usually on the agenda and the approval of the minutes, I usually just ask if anyone's opposed.
Okay.
If no one's opposed, then we just assume everyone's in favor. So is anyone opposed to the approval of the agenda?
I do got one question, Fred. Is the commission going to be, are we going to be giving any recommendations back to the commission on this as far as mullet goes?
Not tonight. I think that may come before us later in the spring, but Dan and Jeff may comment on that, but we're not being asked to make comments tonight.
And Fred, if you want, I can speak to that a little bit now.
Sure.
And we'll
Yeah.
definitely go into it, Ken, more during that update information. But tonight is the supplement to Amendment 1 of the Mullet FMP is currently out for public comment. And so this is not an item that comes to you in a formal matter for an AC vote, but it is an opportunity for you to talk to the leads and provide feedback on that supplement if you have any. And then that's the supplement. We also we're currently, Amendment 2 is underway, and that will come to you, not this time, but in the future, soon in the future, for your AC comments and also recommendations, just so you know.
Super. Thanks, Laura.
Yep.
The minutes were included with the agenda that was sent to everyone. So our last meeting in the fall. And so the minutes were short. And we got an update on some fishery management plans. And also got an update on the Marine Fisheries Commission last time as well. So if anyone has any changes to the minutes from our October meeting, let us know about those. If not, I'll ask for a motion to approve the minutes from October.
I'll make the motion, Tom Smith, to approve.
Okay. Do we have a second on those minutes?
Jason Fowler will second.
Okay. Anyone opposed to the minutes or have any amendments to the minutes? I read through them and they seem to convey our discussions, so I didn't have any changes that jumped to my mind. Okay, hearing no opposition, we'll approve the minutes from October. So the first item on the agenda is a presentation on advisory committee orientation from Laura Klabansky. And so I'll turn it over to Laura.
Thanks, Fred. All right, so I'm going to get my document up. And basically what I'm going to do is a pretty quick, it's sort of a piece of an orientation, but it's sort of a first step that we think is a good starting point, specifically for new members if you haven't served before, or just as a reminder for people who've been here a while. All right. I have to arrange all of my screen pieces, so this will take just another second. Bear with me. All right. Okay, so as Fred said, my name's Laura Klabansky, and I am the Marine Fisheries Commission Liaison. Most of you are pretty familiar with me now. I talk a lot during these meetings, and this one is no exception. First, I do want to say welcome to our new members and also to those of you who have been reappointed. It's great to have you here to do this work with us. So thank you for doing that. So since tonight's meeting is only 2 hours and we have other business to get to, this is going to be a pretty brief orientation. So it's going to focus primarily on the duties of the advisory committee. And my goal tonight is just to begin what will be sort of an ongoing learning experience for all of us, hopefully. But we have to begin somewhere. So tonight it's with an overview of your duties and what that looks like in the context of our annual meeting cycle. So while this will be quick, please know that myself and my staff in the MFC office are always available to you at any time. If you have questions or concerns or anything, please reach out to us. All right, so with that, I am going to start with a very brief overview of some history. Specifically, I want to briefly touch on the fact that North Carolina is celebrating its 200th anniversary of fisheries management this year. So as you can imagine, a lot has changed in those 200 years. And for our purposes today, I want to mention 2 dates specifically. So the first date is December of 1822. At that time, the first fisheries legislation was passed here in North Carolina, and it was titled An Act to Prevent the Destruction of Oysters and Other Purposes. So just to drop this in history for you, in 1822, James Monroe was the 5th president of the United States, and the number of states had just increased to 24 when Missouri was admitted the year before. So this legislation was passed prior to the Civil War that began in 1861, and it also began before the American Industrial Revolution, which began in about 1870. So you can see we have this very long history of fisheries management in the state. So this legislation set gear restrictions, it established an oyster season, it created fines to deter non-resident oyster harvests, and it also prohibited the transport of oysters out of the state. And even way back in 1822, there were concerns about overharvest, specifically by out-of-state fishermen. which is astounding to me every time I think about it. So instead we're not going to cover the entire FRA. Let me go back. I missed part of my information. All right, so from this beginning, fisheries management in the state evolved from a focus on this single fishery to many species fisheries, and then to include regulation of what were the evolving commercial and recreational sectors. So this leads to the second point, which is 1997. This was the year that the Fisheries Reform Act was passed and ushered in a new way of managing fisheries in the state. So on the screen, you can see a quote on the right-hand side here from the preamble of the Fisheries Reform Act, which says, "The General Assembly recognizes the need to protect our coastal fishery resources and to balance the commercial and recreational interests through better management of these resources." So the Fisheries Reform Act was a pretty remarkable piece of legislation, and it was a cooperative effort by legislators, fisheries managers, scientists, and both commercial and recreational stakeholders. And it made many changes to the way that we manage fisheries in the state. It did this by restructuring the Marine Fisheries Commission. It mandated the development of fishery management plans and also the Coastal Habitat Protection Plan. And it implemented a new licensing structure. So we're not going to go into the FRA tonight. That is too big of a topic. But we are going to talk about a single FRA statute, which is here on the screen. And this is NCAC 143B-289.57. which is the law that establishes the advisory committees. So I haven't included the text of the law here because it is pretty long. However, as you can see by the title, this law includes the establishment, membership, and the selection of the advisory committees. And tonight, I'm going to focus on that final noun in this list, which is the duties that this law describes. So I've pulled the duty language from the body of the law, and those are displayed here on the screen. The first duty of the advisory committees is to assist the committee in the performance of its duties. I got lost. By reviewing all matters referred to the committee by the commission, and shall make findings and recommendations on these matters. So the second is that the standing committees may make findings and recommendations as to any matter related to its subject area, and the commission shall consider all findings and recommendations. So now that we've read the law, let's look at what that actually looks like in practice. So as I mentioned earlier, the FRA mandated the establishment of the Marine Fisheries Commission. Nope. As I mentioned earlier, the FRA mandated the establishment of the Marine Fisheries Commission, the two types of fishery management plans by the Marine Fisheries Commission, the Fisheries Management Plans and the Coastal Habitat Protection Plan. So both are described in statute, but they differ in their development and adoption. So the CHIP is a collaborative process with two other commissions within the department, while the fishery management plans are solely under the authority of the Marine Fisheries Commission. So the majority of the actions undertaken by the Marine Fisheries Commission are associated with these management plan processes. Thus, most of the actions that come before you, the advisory committees, are from these same processes. All right, so here on the screen, what you can see is a simplified representation of the FMP process. There are other processes, including the CHIP process, that come into play less frequently. However, I want to focus on the FMP process because, as I said, it's the most frequent process by which the MFC refers matters to you. So here I've highlighted in orange the point in the FMP process at which the commission sends the draft FMP document to you, the advisory committees, and to the general public for review. So this is the point in the formal FMP process where you fulfill that first duty that we discussed. So while this represents the formal process by which you assist the commission, there are other opportunities for you to provide informal feedback to division staff and the commission as plans are being developed. So this is covered under that second duty, which again, you can see here that the standing committees may make findings and recommendations as to any matter related to its subject area, and the commission shall consider all findings and recommendations. So, for example, at these quarterly meetings, you'll receive these updates from myself and from staff on various issues, and these are primarily to keep you up to speed on commission business, but it also provides you an opportunity to ask questions and also provide feedback. So an example of these other opportunities is tonight's informal opportunity for you to discuss and provide feedback and comments to the DMF lead biologists on the striped bass supplement, striped mullet supplement. So in these cases, there's no specific referral from the commission. Rather, it's an opportunity for you, the advisors, to provide thoughts or feedbacks on these issues. So seeing this one little bar in this process, and I know it's hard to see all the steps, but seeing this, it might not seem like a lot. However, we currently have 13 FMPs that are reviewed approximately every 5 years. And with the additional updates and discussions, the AC calendar can fill up quite quickly, depending on how these plan reviews are staggered. So to help coordinate all of these moving pieces, we've developed an MFC work plan. Which is here on the screen. I know this is impossible to read, and the point is not to read it at this point, but just so that just to let you know that it exists and that it's a tool that's available to you. So it's updated after each commission meeting and is part of the chairman's briefing material for each meeting. So this is released quarterly. We use this as a tracking tool to monitor the various work topics that the commission and the division are working on over an approximately 2-year period, roughly. So this can be very helpful if you're wondering, say, when the clam and oyster FMPs are going to be coming to you and where they are in the various processes. So I do recommend that you review this document at least once a year, just so you have a sense of what might be coming up for your review in the near future, and also just to inform your preparation for these meetings. So for example, this can let you know when you might hear discussions on various topics at the commission meetings over the year or over the next 2 years. So this is one tool that's available on the website. However, there are many more tools and just resources in general that are available to you on the MFC website. That includes like MFC briefing materials, recordings of meetings, DMF review documents, including our annual FMP reviews, where we essentially review all of our FMPs every single year. And also the Big Book, which is our statistics report, which contains all of the data that we collect in some of our programs. So I don't want to overwhelm you with all of the information, but I do want you to know that you have a plethora of resources that are available to you. And that gets me to the MFC office. So, so here on the screen are the MFC support staff. There are 3 of us that are housed within the Division of Marine Fisheries, and then the Marine Fisheries Commission attorney is housed in the Department of Justice. So the in-house staff are myself, and I'm the liaison again. There's Paula Farnell, who is our new program assistant, and there's also Catherine Bloom, who is our rulemaking coordinator. So we are available to you if you have any questions or concerns as you sort of work through all these processes and all of these issues and various things. So Paula and I are your primary points of contact, and we act sort of like your guides to the commission. So we are a good place to start if you have a question. We can usually get you where you need to go or help you contact who you're looking for. So speaking of Paula, I'm going to hand it over to her briefly just to discuss some of the administrative items that have come along with being a new AC member, primarily the onboarding documents. Paula, if you want to just go ahead and I'll take back over when she's finished.
Thank you so much, Laura. Hi, everybody. I'm going to just share my voice for now to keep things simple. Most of you have probably heard a lot of things from me. And thank you to our new members for bearing with me. I am relatively new to my position here myself, so I'm learning all the processes, but trying to work with you on paperwork. And I know a lot of you have already gotten stuff back to me, so I appreciate that as well. But yeah, just certainly please feel free to reach out, email me. I sent out my cell phone number to you guys. Call me, text me. If you have any questions or issues, that goes to all of our, current members, reappointees, new members. Definitely just reach out with any questions. And if I don't know the answer, I will make sure I point you in the right direction. So hopefully I'll look forward to being able to meet some of you guys in person in April.
Thank you, Paula. All right. And so with that, as I said, there's a lot to cover and not a lot of time. So after these January AC meetings, the MFC office, that's me and Paula primarily, will be sending out an overview of the year ahead, as well as links to the information that we've referenced here. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us with any questions. We are here to make this process as smooth as we can for you. And with that, I'm actually going to bring us to the little sub item, which is the Stock Assessment 101 presentation. That was sent to you as part of your briefing materials for this meeting. One of the things that we want to try to do is utilize our ability to have information and resources available to you online. And one of the things that we have there is that 101, the Stock Assessment 101 presentation. So hopefully you had a chance to view it before you came tonight. And we did ask our stock assessment scientist, Laura Lee, to be here tonight just to talk to you, not to present anything, but just to be here in case anyone had questions, if you wanted to talk about, just stock assessments in general, if you had any questions. So Fred, with that, we can just do questions and that otherwise concludes my presentation.
Super. Thanks, Laura. So I guess we can have questions for Laura first on if anyone has questions on the role of the AC, role of us as a regional AC, and the fishery management plan, the fishery management process in North Carolina in general. If anyone has any specific questions for Laura and Paula about any of the stuff that Laura just talked about, feel free. I do think it's important to note for folks, in spending time working with folks in a lot of other states and other state agencies, most of the other state agencies don't use the kinds of approaches that we do here. In terms of having a mandated fishery management plan process with clear steps within that process for public comment and advisory committee input, and then the formation of species specific advisory committees when those FMPs are created or amended. And so it's pretty unique, particularly within the South and throughout the Gulf of Mexico, the kinds of approaches that North Carolina uses since the Fishery Reform Act was passed in '97. So, but it can be a lot to follow. So if people have questions about any of the steps, certainly ask Laura.
Yeah, and Fred, that's right. And there's a lot to cover in that. And it would probably take all 4 of your meetings this year to get through all of it. Yeah. So I hope that this little it's just a tiny little piece, but I'm hoping that this at least gets us started.
And then, there was a presentation that was shared with you guys, which is just a stock assessment 101 that Laura Lee put together. Laura's the lead stock assessment scientist. She leads that group here for the state, and has participated in lots of interstate stock assessments and stock assessment, the process at the federal level as well. So, and Laura's here to answer any questions you might have about that process. If anyone has any stock assessment questions. Not seeing any hands up or hearing any questions, so if we can move forward to the Marine Fisheries Commission update. One thing to note for folks is that, is that Laura attends all of our meetings, as well as, the Chris Stewart, who's the supervisory biologist here in the Wilmington district, and our district manager, Tina Moore. So there's always a lot of staff at our meetings. So whenever you guys have questions about the role of the advisory committee and how it fits in the whole grand scheme of the fishery management plan process, don't hesitate to ask during any of our meetings. They'll be glad to talk about that. And if you have stock assessment questions, and Laura doesn't come to all of our meetings, but you can always ask me, and I'll try to answer them. I'm not quite as versed as Laura, but I know what the pieces are. So you can always ask me about some of those models and how they work. So we can move on and have Laura give us the commission update. They had a November meeting, right, Laura?
Yep, absolutely.
So she can give us that update.
All right, and towards the end, we will be talking about striped mullet. Like I said, we don't have a presentation. The supplement is out for public review, but that'll come at the end. And if we want to talk about it more, then we can. All right, so the MFC November meeting. So I do have a number of updates that came out of that November meeting. So if you'll remember back at your October meeting, we were still awaiting on a final commissioner, but I'm happy to say that we now have a full complement of commissioners. Sarah Gardner was sworn in October, so during the last cycle of the AC meetings. And so at the November meeting, we had a full commission. So yay. I was happy that was all resolved. The first thing that I want to cover is that the commission did discuss the joint fishing waters delineation issue. This is a continuation of an issue that began way back in 2018 and is related to the joint rules that are shared by the Marine Fisheries Commission and the Wildlife Resources Commission. And so the boundaries that establish the inland joint and the coastal waters of the state. So a memorandum of agreement was prepared over the summer by MFC and WRC staff at the request of the chairman of both commissions in an effort to make progress on this issue. And the MFC did not take a vote on that MOA. However, they did request that DMF staff reach out to the WRC staff and work towards recommending a plan for how to move forward to address this issue. So we are currently continuing to work with WRC staff, and hopefully we can make some progress on that issue soon. So the commission also approved a full slate of nominees for the obligatory seat for the Mid-Atlantic Fishery Management Council. Those nominees will now go to the governor's boards and commissions office for consideration. So there were four nominees, excuse me. They were Mike Blanton, Jess Hawkins, Thomas Newman, and Robert Rule. And the commission gave final approval on Amendment 2 of the Estuarine Striped Bass FMP. This includes maintaining the gillnet closure above the ferry lines in the Neuse and Tarpon River systems until 2024, at which time the division will evaluate the effectiveness of the harvest moratorium and the gillnet closure in that area. So the gillnet closure dominated a lot of the conversation around the Amendment 2 of that estuarine striped bass FMP. And that was, again, at the November meeting, that's where we saw a lot of the conversation focused. So that plan was adopted, and now it is in the process of being implemented. The commission also gave approval of the goals and objectives for development of Amendment 2 of the striped mullet FMP. So we are currently in the process of developing Amendment 2. But the commission also approved option 2 for supplement A to amendment 1 of the striped mullet FMP. So we're developing amendment 2. The supplement is intended to establish management measures that will effectively go into place quicker, so that as we move through amendment 2, there are management measures in place to address overfishing. So the FMP, or excuse me, the supplement is currently out for public comment. And just as a reminder, the commission selected option 2, which was a season closure at the end of the year. And it's closure from November 7th through December 31st, which is estimated to result in a 22.1% reduction. So if you'll remember back in October, the striped mullet lead spoke to you about the scoping period that was going on for Amendment 2. They have graciously come back and are here to answer any of your questions or receive comments if you have any on this supplement. And Fred, I have a little bit more to finish. If we want to pause now, we can pause, or I can keep going.
Yeah, why don't you finish the report and then from the update for the commission, and then we can circle back to striped mullet questions that people might have.
Okay, so the rest of my report is just an update on the upcoming February meeting. That meeting is scheduled for February 22nd through the 24th. And it's being held in New Bern at the Doubletree. And the commission is scheduled to discuss a false albacore information paper. They're also going to be receiving a spotted sea trout fishery overview. And this is just a discussion and information leading up to the amendment process. They're going to be hearing about a blue crab FMP Amendment 3 revision, and this revision is part of the adaptive management of that amendment, and it's to basically review and revise the Diamondback terrapin excluder devices that were included as part of that plan. The Shellfish and Crustacean AC actually have that on their agenda for a review item for this cycle. They're also going to be hearing the public comment that is received for supplement A for the striped mullet, and they're going to be voting on final approval for that plan. And then there are a couple of rulemaking items there's a couple of rules that are related to marinas, but there's one rule called the mutilated finfish rule. This is one that recreational fishermen use, or it's related to the use of bait, essentially, that's being reviewed and it's going to be go through final adoption at that February meeting. And that is it for the update.
Okay. Thanks, Laura. Do folks do you want to have are Dan and Jeff, do they have, you know, an update on the supplement that they just want to talk to us about? I know there's not a formal presentation, but or do they just want to see if we have any specific questions? the way it's written on the agenda was that they had an update. So I thought they might want to share something, maybe things that are being talked about with Amendment 2. I'm not sure. And then we could have questions, or do they just want to open the floor for questions?
Yep. So Dan is here, and he can certainly talk about it. The biggest update is the update from the commission with them adopting, or with them having their preferred option be the 22% reduction. So that's the big item that's out now for review.
Yeah, this is Dan, and I'll just add to that. So that 22.1% reduction that the commission chose as their preferred option, that's a season closure from November 7th to December 31st, and that would apply to both the commercial and recreational sectors.
So are there, Dan, I was going to ask about, some of the ideas that are being considered as part of Amendment 2. So Laura mentioned that during this November commission meeting, you guys were given approval to sort of begin the process for Amendment 2. And so are you able to talk a little bit about what some of those things are, or is it a little too early in the stage for that?
Yeah, I can absolutely talk about some of the things that we've started to explore. And so we took the initial step of bringing the FMP to the scope, or we had a scoping period where we brought the striped mullet scoping document that we had prepared to solicit ideas from the public about what they wanted to see us explore. We had already come up with some ideas on our own, so we had those to kind of guide the scoping meetings. So sustainable harvest of the stock is obviously the big issue facing us. And some of the ideas that we're looking at to explore further as part of development of the amendment. So quotas, that's one we'll be looking at. Season closures, that's obviously what we're proceeding with through the supplement, but that is something we could look at as a viable option to manage the fishery moving forward. We got some feedback from not only the commission, but during the scoping about the need to protect larger fish in the stock. So we'll be looking at, and we also, from the public, we got feedback about protecting smaller fish too. So various minimum or maximum size limits they'll be explored as part of developments of the amendment. We'll also be looking at like other management measures like area closures. One thing that we heard a lot from the public is the desire to maintain gillnet closures in the Neuse and Pamlico rivers to help protect striped mullet. And then we're also going to be looking at things like day of the week closures. One of the issues that we got from the commission was, is there a way that we can, develop day of the week closures and work those in with other types of measures to extend the season for the stakeholders. So those are the initial issues that we're thinking about for the sustainable harvest issue. Small mesh gillnets are an issue that we've been directed by the MFC to address. So last year we had brought them an issue paper looking at potential management measures for the small mesh gillnet fishery as a whole. They didn't take any action on that at that time, but they directed the division that as part of the every species FMP that we look at regulations that could be put in place for small mesh gillnets. Small mesh gillnets are the primary gear used to harvest striped mullet, so we need to, based on their feedback, we need to take a look at the small mesh gillnet issue further as part of this FMP. And the way that we want to approach that is looking at small mesh gillnet regulations or rules that could be put in place to support sustainable harvest, reduce regulatory complexity, and potentially reduce user conflict if those are possibilities that we can explore. We're also going to be so we're also going to be developing a recreational fishery information paper. As part of the stock assessment, we used data from MRIP to get estimates of striped mullet recreational harvest. But because of the nature of how striped mullet are used by the recreational fishery, they're primarily used as live bait. So anytime a recreational fisher is cast netting striped mullet for bait, what they don't use, they usually release. So our samplers don't really ever see those fish, so they don't get a chance to identify them to species. So we have a study that says like 29% of the mullet in a cast net in the cast net fishery is probably striped mullet. But we really wanted, like, as part of this information paper, we want to put out all the data that we have on the recreational fishery, even though our estimates are somewhat uncertain. And we want to really identify those holes in our data and push like where we could fill in, how we could maybe fill in some of those holes in that data. And then we also want to look at potentially, like, are there management measures for the recreational fishery that make sense to help support sustainable harvest as well. There's a couple other issues that we're probably going to look at as well. We want to look at the stop net fishery. Historically, that was a very high volume striped mullet fishery. It's not so much anymore. It's only allowed in one area along boat banks in Atlantic Beach. But we want to look at that a little further and see what we could maybe do there, if anything. And then the issue of migration corridors has popped up in a number of our fishery management plans recently, and that's something we could potentially look at for striped mullet moving forward. So those are the ideas that we've put out so far and that we're working on developing. But it certainly, like, if this committee or any other members of the public had ideas that they would want us to look at, we'll certainly listen to those.
That's great. Thank you. Thanks a lot for the update, Dan. Appreciate all the information. Does anyone have any questions for Dan on striped mullet, particularly as they move towards Amendment 2? I think we're at that point, right, where the commission has adopted, the changes in terms of the seasonal closures to try to achieve some sustainable harvest as part of Amendment 1 and the supplement to Amendment 1. But Amendment 2 is under development, which would be more longer term approaches that they think can ensure longer term sustainability. So if folks have questions or comments for Dan about those, now would be a good time.
Mr.
I
Chairman,
think Ken has his hand up.
Okay, go ahead, Ken.
Quite concerned about the closure November the 7th through December 31st. What's going to occur there if you take that position and go down that road is the 20% reduction that you're looking for. 100% of that 20% reduction is going to come south of Bogue Inlet. Basically, half the state's going to be shut down, and there'll be no roe mullet fishery here. Another concern I have, I'm looking at the data, the landing data, and I see that 2021 landings are the highest in 10 years. And actually the 2021 is the 10th highest in all recorded since 1972. And then I go on and I look and I pull out one phrase here. It says review of the 2019-2020 commercial landings, while reduced, indicate neither the maximum nor the minimum triggers have been exceeded. And I'm guessing, because it's not clear there, that's the triggers for a supplement. If you didn't have a need for a supplement in 19 or 20, you certainly don't have one reason for wanting 22 or 23. Because I can assure you the 22 landings far exceeded the 21 landings. And like I said, they're the highest that they've been in a decade. Another point that I come across was saying that mullet could spawn from September through March. And that's a statement in the assessment. And I'd like to clarify something here. That may be true, but it's in the far lower latitudes, and it's not the situation in the North Carolina fish or the fish that we take here. Those fish, when we start catching them in the southern part of the state, are coming in mid-November, and that's when we start seeing the fish that we catch in the southern part of the state through December. Yeah, we see a few schools early on, but the row count on them is so low, it's below 13%, that the cutter doesn't even want to look at them for production purposes. They don't even want them. They want row that's, 15, 16, 17%. So we have to wait in the southern part of the state. We have to wait for that row size to achieve that percentage before we can even start harvesting. And we would be shut out. Like I said, 100% of that 20% reduction would come south of Bogue Inlet, Bogue Sound. As far as those mullets, we start catching spawned mullets about the 1st of December. Okay, those mullets come back, and we call them snakes. They've already been out. They've already gone through the spawn cycle, and they're coming back in to feed up. The mullets that they're coming to group back up with are mullets that are in here that the roe hasn't achieved size, and those fish are not going to spawn. And the way we tell that is you can verify it. You can go up to the northern part around Beaufort and Moorhead and whatnot and take a sample of the fish around there when they're in the middle of this spawning run, and you won't see any mud or grit in the gizzard nor the entrails. But now you come down here and you take a mullet at the same time and look at it down here, and its gut is full of entrails, is full of mud, its gizzard's full of grit. Those fish are not spawning fish, because when they go to spawn, they quit eating and they don't feed. So when you see mullets in here in the late part of the season, and they're scattered out, and there's 5 over here on this point and 25 over there on that oyster rock, and they scattered mullets, those mullets are not going to spawn, even though they got roe in them. They're going to go back up the river, and they're going to reabsorb that roe, and they never spawn. And it seems like such a waste of a use of a product that we could use. And here we're going to be cut out. 100% of the harvest is going to be cut out. It's not going to work. Thank you.
So this is Dan. I appreciate those comments, especially those observations about striped mullet, the timing of the spawning and the behavior prior and after the spawning run. Those are really interesting observations. I just want to add that so the supplement doesn't take into account any area management. The point of the supplement is to implement simple management measures in a timely manner so that we can end overfishing immediately. So we didn't take into account those area differences in the fishery. Certainly and definitely as a part of Amendment 2, we will definitely look at that area component in the various timing in the differences in the fisheries in different regions of the state. And I forgot to mention it earlier, but that is something that we heard specifically from numerous members of the public during the scoping period, and as well from members of the Marine Fisheries Commission, that is something that they wanted us to look at, is the regional differences in the fishery and incorporating those into management. I want to clarify one other point from your comments about the trigger for the supplement. So I want to just be clear that the trigger for the supplement was the stock assessment that was completed in 2022. And so that stock assessment found that overfishing is occurring on the stock and the stock is overfished. The Secretary of DEQ reviewed the assessment and recommendations from us and or the division and determined that it was in the best long-term interest of the fishery and the stock to end overfishing on the stock immediately by developing a supplement. So that was the trigger to do this supplement. And the commission at their meeting in November, they adopted the management measures for the supplement. The previous triggers that you referenced, those were minimum and maximum commercial landings triggers that were put into place during Amendment 1. And so those set out that if commercial landings fell below that minimum landings level or above that minimum landings or above that maximum landings level, the division would just take a closer look at the data and then would make a decision about why those landings increased or why they decreased. So definitely it hasn't happened recently where we've fallen below that level, and we've never recently gone above that level either. Not even in 2020 when the landings were really elevated, or 2021 when the landings were really elevated. The only time since adoption of Amendment 1 where we fell below that trigger was in 2016. And so the division followed through on that process and just reviewed the data, and we wound up updating the stock assessment. And based on results of that assessment, we recommended not doing anything, and the commission supported that recommendation as well.
We're still currently under the guidelines of Amendment 1 operating right now.
That's correct. Yep.
Well, then if there go by and the triggers haven't been met according to the guidelines of Amendment 1, then the supplement is not in order, would be my conscious thinking here. And as far as looking at the area closures and concerns in Amendment 2, this supplement has a midnight clause on it for this year, 2023 season alone, and it goes dead. So we're just going to get cut out of 100% of our mullet harvest for this year, and then everything's supposed to be hunky-dory again. I don't think that's the way it's supposed to work. I think there's a fairer and more competent way to achieve whatever reductions are needed, and I don't see as any reductions that are needed because, like I said, in the last 3 years harvest, 4 years harvest, everything is on an upward trend. And with the 2021 landings, you got record landings there that went back for a decade, and like I said, 10th highest landings ever since 1972. So the stock is has no issues, and I say that as a fisherman and a conscious conservationist, that there's nothing wrong with mullets, my friend. If you want to, and which brings up another concern, what are you protecting by eliminating the harvest of the large fish?
So we're not through the supplements anyway. Like we're not specifically eliminating the harvest of larger fish.
Hey, Ken, can you mute yourself?
I'm sorry, excuse me.
Oh, thank you.
Hopefully that'll do away with the echo now. So the intent of this supplement is not necessarily to specifically eliminate the harvest of the large fish. That was the direction that was suggested to us by members of the public and the commission. The intent of this supplement is to provide protection to those spawners. So as you're aware, like most of the harvest on striped mullet occurs during their spawning run when they're moving out to the ocean to spawn. And so by doing an end of the year closure, that's allowing those fish to move out into the ocean to spawn, regardless of what size they are. It's allowing them to move out into the ocean to spawn. Once they're out in the ocean, the fishery is pretty minimal on them out there. So we would expect, by allowing those additional fish to move out into the ocean and not be harvested, that gives them an opportunity, like the best opportunity to spawn.
That's what I'm trying to relay to you in my previous comments. The vast majority of those fish, when they come back in, they're breaking up in little pods, 5 fish here, 20 fish there. Those fish are feeding and they're not going to spawn. The vast majority of them will not spawn, and they've got what we call the snakes mixed in with them. They've already been through the spawning process. The spawning run is effectively over and ended when those fish start showing back up in the catch.
So,
You understand?
I'm sorry, Fred, do you mind if I, just a second?
Go ahead.
I just wanted to bring up a point that you touched on, Ken, about the amendment being in Amendment 1 currently being in place and the supplement process. Just for everybody's benefit, the amendment document is where the current management is housed. But it's actually the process to create that document is what Dan's referring to when we talk about the supplement or an amendment or a revision to an FMP. So while you're right, Ken, about the trigger being inside that FMP, that larger process that dictates the development of the various types of changes to the FMP, that's sort of a broader process, and that's where that stock assessment dictating that supplement, that's sort of on that larger process. So just to try to clarify that a little bit, I don't know if that did or not. Maybe that can be our next overview.
Yeah,
I
thanks,
understand
Laura.
it whether you do or not.
Yeah, thanks, Laura, for that explanation on the supplement. So the supplement has already been voted on by the commission, and that's just a stopgap measure for 2023. And what the advisory committee and the plan development team for the striped mullet FMP are working on now is these longer term measures for Amendment 2 that will help to ensure sustainable harvest within the fishery. And we talked about it.
Which is my point, Fred. We're still working under Amendment 1, and the processes under Amendment 1 dictate when a supplement is triggered.
No. The trigger, Ken, is just to have the division look at the data. When you hit those triggers, the stock assessment that was recently conducted, which was, approved for management, showed that the stock is overfished and overfishing is occurring. So it's the stock assessment results that dictate the potential need for a supplement, right, before Amendment 2. And that's coming from the Secretary of DEQ that said, given the results of the assessment, it's prudent to have a supplement to make some changes quickly to lower the harvest rate while Amendment 2, because Amendment 2 is going to take a while. It's going to take this year to have the ideas shared and exchanged between the advisory committee, the division, the commission, public comment. And so, Amendment 2 wouldn't be able to be put in place until 2024 at the earliest. And so the secretary said, based on the results of the stock assessment, not any triggers, the stock assessment, which was approved for management, said, look, the biomass is too low and the harvest rate is too high, and we need to do something really quick now and then work on some long-term measures.
I think my concern there was the stock assessment. It is a stock assessment that's gone back and changing history for 30, 40, 50 years now, saying they were all overfished. And that's simply not the truth. In fact of the matter, I think the model is the wrong fit for what they're doing on this assessment. If they used the model that they had been doing, then all the parameters and everything would be the same. I mean, you raised the trigger points five percentage points 4 years ago, and the only thing that has occurred is the stock or the landings have increased. And the only way the landings are going to increase when you have a decrease in the number of fishermen is that there's more fish available. So the stock, there's no problem with the stock. The problem is with the stock assessment and the model being used is what I see.
So this is Dan again. So I just want to correct one thing that that you just said, Mr. Siegler. So about the moving of the thresholds for determining overfishing. So that actually didn't occur. We moved the target as part of Amendment 1. That went from 30 to 35%. The target isn't used for determining the overfished or overfishing status. The threshold is. The threshold has been the same since the first stock assessment that we did in 2002. That hasn't changed. So we're still using that same threshold to determine the overfished or overfishing status. And
Dan, I hate to agree with you. I sat on that committee, on the Finfish Committee, when that threshold level was changed 4 years ago.
The threshold level wasn't changed. The target was changed. You can go back and look at it in part of Amendment 1, and it'll clearly say that. We brought this point up at the last Finfish AC meeting, which you were there, and I think you asked the same question, and we corrected you then. Yeah, it's in Amendment 1, so you can go back and look at it if you want to.
So what you're saying is the thresholds don't move with the target.
Right, that's correct. Yep, the threshold is set at I think it's at 25%, and the target is set at 35%. And the target went from 30 to 35%, but the threshold didn't move.
And then the lower threshold would be 25%.
Yep, that's correct.
Anybody else have questions for?
If I recall, I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna research and look into it. But if I recall back, that lower threshold was 20% before it was changed to 25%.
So do other committee members have any questions or comments for Dan? I wanted to give some other folks a chance here. Tom, did you have your hand up earlier?
I did, and I guess my only question is when they use these numbers of reduction, they usually assign a percentage chance that it will accomplish that reduction by doing, what is the estimated, I guess, chance that this will do what it's supposed to do? If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And so Laura Lee, she can correct me if I'm wrong here, but we assign the percentage chance that it will accomplish what we're hoping it will when we're talking about rebuilding the stock and ending the overfished status. We don't do that when we're talking about ending overfishing. So what we're doing with overfishing is just a reduction in landings to end overfishing immediately. When we're talking more long term and rebuilding the stock, then we talk about percenting or assigning a percentage chance of success for that. The reason that the division recommended a higher reduction to end overfishing was to increase the chance that we actually achieve that, rather than just ending overfishing at the threshold level. We recommended either doing it all the way to the target or somewhere close-ish to the target to increase those chances of that occurring.
Thank you.
And Fred, can I make one comment?
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure, one comment that you had made, the supplement hasn't had final approval yet. It won't have final approval until the February meeting. but they did select their preferred option. That's what Dan was just talking about.
Super, thank you. So I guess one thing I wanted to ask Dan and probably you also, Laura, is the timing of the process for Amendment 2, because in our October meeting, I think Jeff was there, Jeff Dobbs was there, and so he sort of started to go over some of the management options that they're thinking about and they're being discussed within the ACs and the management plan development team that Dan brought up, in terms of going beyond just seasonal closures, although that's still on the table, or quotas or area closures or protection of size groups of fish, small fish, big fish, maybe looking at some day of the week closures, looking more specifically at small mesh gill nets in terms of ways to reduce regulatory complexity, et cetera, all this kind of stuff. So Jeff kind of outlined some of those things to us a little bit in November and said, okay, these are the things that are going to be on the table. And so it would be good for us to know about the timing of this and when we can expect it to come back to us so that folks here can talk more with constituents in the southern part of the state, and then maybe we can have an organized set of sort of responses, and maybe it'll help us, I think, to be better prepared when it comes back to us in terms of giving some advice, particularly for the southern half of the state.
So I can actually cover that one. That work plan that I showed you, and you'll get a copy of it in your email following this meeting. So we anticipate, and these timing can always change depending on other things, but right now, we expect the commission to vote to send the plan out for review by the advisory committees in August of this year. So that means that would come to your October AC meetings. And so so we're alternating virtual in person. So that would be your second in-person meeting for the year. And then the final adoption right now is scheduled to occur in February of 2024. So a year from this February meeting. I think you're muted.
So we can certainly expect it back in our agenda for October for sure. It certainly doesn't prevent us from talking about it. When we get together in April, we could certainly have this. Even if we're not making specific recommendations in April, we could set aside some time for some open discussion about ideas related to Amendment 2.
That's Amendment 2. We're going from the supplement to the amendment.
Mm-hmm.
I was most concerned about what the supplement's going to do. Like I said, it's going to close. It's going to close half the state down for a year, and then what happens after that year? Because I distinctly remember the commission putting a midnight clause on their recommendations.
So this is Dan. Yeah, so our intent anyway, as Laura said, is to have this plan to the commission in February 2024 for final adoption. At that point, the supplement would be, unless the measures from the supplement are maintained as part of the amendment, once the amendment is adopted, these measures would go away and we would be under Amendment 2 management.
Super. Thanks, Dan. Any other questions for Dan?
I got one question. I hate to be, seem like I'm hogging up everybody's time, but I guess they can raise their hand if you want to. Why is the approach on the most valuable part of the fishery being the roe mullet fishery instead of the recruitment side of the equation?
So, not sure what you're asking. So, are you asking like why are we looking to reduce harvest on the spawning fish and not the like the finger mullet?
You got sub-adults, then you got adults that haven't entered the spawning stock. The whole thing what you're focusing on is the spawning roe mullet. Okay, and the thing that messes it up for me is during the flounder FMP, it was specifically pointed out that the large fish are the fish that's doing the spawning. And we said, if you're going to shut something down, shut down the large fish. And oh, no. We can't do that. Can't shut down the large fish. You're still targeting the spawning stock on flounder right now. What is the problem? I mean, you look at the two species, they got a pretty similar age structure. They got a similar migration structure spawning when they go to spawn in the same areas. I can't see why you've got to say, well, if you close the spawning mullet, it's going to have a bigger effect than it would be working on the recruitment side of the equation on the smaller mullets, making sure the sub-adults and the adults enter the spawning stock biomass instead of trying to maintain the spawning stock biomass at its level, which natural predation is not going to allow you to do.
Okay. Yeah, I think I understand what you're trying to say, and you're spot on. In your comparison between striped mullet and flounder, they do have a pretty similar life history in the way that they spawn. So the way that we came up with this season closure and our thinking about this season closure is we looked at the landings, we looked at the monthly landings, we looked at the daily landings over the last I think it was 5 or 10 years. And so as you know, and most people are aware, like the majority of the striped mullet commercial landings, they occur in October and November. And more specifically, about 50% of the landings occurs from about October 15th through November 15th. It's a very pulse fishery that occurs over a really short period of time, or really fairly short period of time. And that is relatively consistent from year to year. Like we really haven't seen a whole lot of shift in that time period when that fishery occurs. We have seen some shift towards like the fishery occurring a little bit later, like I think this year in particular, like that the seemed like there was landings all the way through the end of November. So our thinking with providing additional or cutting off that season at the end of the year was to allow those fish that are making their spawning migrations to be able to move out into the ocean and spawn. If we did a closure of the fishery earlier in the year, like if we did a January through July closure, just picking those months off the top of my head, we wouldn't come anywhere close to achieving the reductions that we need to. Like each of those months individually generally accounts for like less than 5% of the fishery, and like those months combined definitely don't account for like 22% of the fishery. The other reason we didn't do that is because if you say you were to close those early months and then allow that fishery to occur in October, November, and December, those fish could just be caught up at the end of the year. You would just be basically like saving those fish to be caught at the end of the year, which would be good for the fishery. It's not necessarily good for the spawning stock.
I just happen to be of the mindset that recruitment is more important than just trying to sustain a spawning stock that's subject to natural mortality in itself. You're going to get a lot more bang for your buck if you're putting 100,000 more fish into the spawning stock versus taking 25,000 out. The natural regression, you're going to get a lot more bang for your buck putting more fish in that are taken out. That's my point.
Yeah, and I certainly agree with you there that anything that we can do to increase recruitment, like we definitely want to do that. And part of the reason we're doing this is because we think this will increase recruitment. Allowing more adult fish to spawn should increase recruitment because you're putting more eggs into that system.
I wouldn't say you're putting more eggs in the system. You're putting more potential for there to be eggs. The last time when I was on Finfish, I asked you the question how you had broken the age structure down on these fish as to with your fish house sampling, what were the sizes of fish that were taken in the spawning run?
What were the sizes of fish? I was just looking at it today. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. I think it's about like 13 to 15 inches is about usually what we see when we're sampling in the fish house. And most of those 13 to 15 inch fish, those are all 2-year-old fish for the most part.
What's the weight on them? Any idea?
So I mean, as you know, like it can be pretty variable depending on the time of year. I can't recall off the top of my head.
What I'm looking for is a 2-pound fish, because that's where the power of the whole spawning stock lies at, is in a 2-pound fish. I did happen to look back on the trip ticket program, and I found it interesting that there are 21 different size classifications for mullets, and I'm wondering why you don't have that data. Are you going to get that data, and is it going to be incorporated into the amendment?
Yeah. Well, when we start to look at different management measures, we're going to explore all of the data that's available to us, including the different market grades that are included, and all of our fish house sampling data.
I wanted to thank you for being here tonight. So Ken, we're gonna move the discussion forward. Keep in mind that we're gonna have a lot of time to have more discussion about mullet and Amendment 2, because it's not gonna come back to us until October. And so what I would encourage the members to do between now and our next meeting is to think about some of the management options that are on the table for Amendment 2. It's pretty wide open. Many things are on the table. And then those can be points of discussion at our next meeting when we circle back on some of this. So I wanted to put it back to Laura real quick and ask her if we had any public comment, because we have to have that in the agenda for the meeting. So do we have anybody from the public that wanted to address the advisory committee tonight?
So I'm going to ask Paula because she's
I was just going to jump on. We do not have anyone from the public, but I did just want to make a note that Truby Proctor did join us a little bit late, but he has been able to join the meeting. So if we do get a chance for that, we can certainly allow him a chance to do an introduction.
Oh, okay, that's great. So Truby, can you hear us?
Yes, can.
Okay. Do you want to just say, quick hello to the committee and just tell us, a little bit about yourself?
All right. Well, appreciate the opportunity. Sorry I was a little bit late. Nothing was working right for a moment there. It's been one of those days, but I live in Marshallburg. Been there full time for 2 years, and in Beaufort prior to that. And in my past experience, I'm a realtor, was former airline pilot, and recreational fisherman. I got a son that's does oysters and clams, and just happy to be involved.
Super. Thanks, Truby. Glad to have you onto the advisory committee, and look forward to meeting you in person in April.
Yes, sir.
Laura, do you want to cover a little bit just any agenda items for the next meeting that things that we are going to need to have on the agenda for the next meeting?
So for the next meeting, we don't actually have anything we have to have. It will include an update from the February meeting, of course. And then one thing that I'm actually interested in, if you don't mind, is talking about in-person locations. Your next meeting in April is expected to be in person. And we had it at the Wilmington Regional Office in October. And so if anybody has thoughts about locations, or if that location worked well for everyone, they can let me know. But other than that, if there are items, sort of updates or just information, if there are any specific, commission items that you would like me to present on, or if you'd like to specifically talk about anything, we can sort of start that conversation and talk about, planning and possibilities. But just to reiterate, there's nothing specifically planned except for the MFC update.
So we're not right now expecting something coming from the commission in terms of an item that we would need to vote on.
Nope, not at this time. And actually, for this year, the only item that we have officially on the schedule is that striped mullet FMP for October.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can we add in there a meeting location in Moorhead?
Yeah, I think that's something that we could certainly consider, since we had our last in-person meeting in Wilmington. Historically, we have done a portion of the meetings have been held in Moorhead, and so I'm okay if people want to go to Moorhead for this in-person meeting, since our last one was Wilmington.
What is the date going to be?
For the
April.
For the April meeting, it is. I have to pull up the calendar. It's the same. It's basically the same dates as now. It's around the 10th.
Laura, we're finding April 12th on our end.
Yeah. Thank you. So April 12th.
April 12th, same time, 6 p.m.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, sometimes we've used that district office up there on Highway 70. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So
I was
if
gonna
that
say,
works,
if it's an in-person, it's 2 hours closer for me to go to Wilmington than it is to Moorhead. I'll say that. But
Okay.
Yeah, I will have. This is Sam. I will have. I may have to join that one if it's got to be in person. Don't y'all offer a call in anyway, especially if we're not necessarily voting on?
yes. So anytime, one of the things that we are this year is that even if we have an in-person, you can have the option to join us virtually. So in the Northern Committee, for example, they requested to split the meetings between the Washington Regional Office and the Manio office. And some people are planning to do one of those virtually just because of the distance. So we can certainly alternate those meetings, and that way we at least give everybody a chance to come in person. But certainly if it's a burden to travel, then we can certainly do virtual option.
Thanks.
Okay. Thanks, Laura. I think I mean, I think out of fairness, we can plan to go to Moorhead for the next meeting, and then, but for folks where that travel is too far, they can join remotely. You know, I'll plan to make the trip up to Moorhead, you know, since, you know, I know people have come down here, but like in Tom's case, you know, he's traveling pretty far anyways. And then to go to Moorhead, it's a lot farther, so he can participate. You know, he can participate remotely. But I know there's a lot of folks that are kind of there's definitely folks closer to the central region, and Moorhead would be a lot closer for them. And then there's folks in between that kind of live in between Wilmington and Moorhead, like Onslow County area. So going either direction's not that much different for them. So we could certainly do that out of fairness, do our next meeting in Moorhead.
Okay.
And I would just ask folks to, considering, you know, that our agenda is a bit open, just to consider topics that they'd like to discuss, and you can send those to myself and Jerry. You know, Jerry James is the vice chair of this committee, so you can send those to Jerry and I and to Laura and say, hey, these are some topics I'd like to talk about, or a topic I'd like to talk about, and then, you know, we can work with Laura to create an agenda. I think that was the last item that we had, Laura. So again, I'd ask folks just to think about it, because again, this is our committee, and when we don't have specific directives from the commission, things we need to vote on, this is our chance to get together and just you know, talk about issues, things that some of us may be more informed about than others, so we can share knowledge and experiences and talk about issues that are relevant to the southern part of the state. So I think, are we able to take a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
I'll
Okay.
second.
So motion from Tom to adjourn, seconded by Ken. Anyone opposed to adjourning?
Ready to go eat dinner.
Yeah, well, thanks everyone for being here tonight. And again, you know, think about what you'd like to talk about in April, and share that with myself and Jerry, and we can work with Laura and work on an agenda. And look forward to seeing a bunch of you in person in April, and Tom, I'll see you probably on the computer again. That's okay.
Never know.
Y'all have a good evening.
Sounds good. Thank you, everybody.
Take care.
Bye.
Thank you.
All right, Laura, see you soon.